Who is Twisty Ceives, and how did he die? Well, Twisty Ceives initially started off as a poet who used WordPress to release both poems and blogs. He didn't fully reveal his identity, though some things were obvious. One of them was that he was more than likely a man clearly stricken by a loss of love and the severe depression that can often follow. In one poem, he alludes to this pain by writing, "Her sleight of hand is cunning, and her mouth is very slick. Her beauty is overcoming, and her bitterness is thick. She is a reflection of my emotions, of my heart, mind, will, and soul. She is the center of my foothold. She is the grappling hook of old." In a later poem, he writes, "I am ready to die as a fool." About a month after this, he published another poem titled, "I'm a Living Inspiration." Later that same day, he published yet another one saying, "I have to stop this life, I have to stop it now. I'm living hypocritically to all those around." Throughout the 200 plus poems he released, a clear contradiction of self can be deduced. But poetry wasn't his only pursuit. In 2017, he published 3 MacBook tutorials to YouTube, generating over 100,000 views and helping roughly 2,000 Mac users in the process. With this development, Twisty redirected his attention to learning independent film production in hopes of creating quality content. He did this with minimal success, despite learning enormous amounts of information about editing and cinematography. And on April 4th, 2023, he met his unexpected demise when a jet ski rear-ended the boat upon which he commuted Florida waters. After being invited by his employer to accompany him, along with friends and co-workers, on his boat and jet ski out into the ocean, Twisty found himself celebrating, along with the others, until they were interrupted by the impact of their fellow jet ski whose pilot had not anticipated the boat to stop. Twisty Ceives, who stood at the back of the boat, was closest to the jet ski's point of collision at the moment of impact. But who was Twisty Ceives? Was he a romantic bachelor caught in love's tight grip? Was he a failed author, unable to let go of his imaginative inspirations? Or was he just another poorly named Gen Z wannabe who never quite made it? The answer may surprise you. Twisty Ceives was a stage name created by a 13-year-old boy who lived in a small town as a social outcast because of an untrue Facebook post made viral within local Facebook groups. Because of this, essentially the entire town believed he was evil, though it was difficult to define how, as no one could provide any evidence or report a viable story confirming any sort of bad behavior. Everything spoken concerning the boy was just hearsay. But gossip is powerful in small towns, and he was driven into loneliness and away from developing friendships and connections. Because of this, he sought poetry as an outlet for his pain. But being too afraid to share this with the world, he created the name Twisty Ceives so that he could release his work publicly without personal recognition. This went on for close to a decade, until the fateful day that a jet ski intervened, changing everything. But what exactly changed? And how did Twisty Ceives die? Who was he before he took on this bizarre pseudonym? And why was an entire town driven to hatred? Oftentimes, with questions like these, we expect the answers to be equally mysterious to the query proposed, if not at least entertaining. This mystery, however, is no mystery at all. People, despite enormous biological complexity, are very simple. Though change is a necessity of our survival, we often flee in the face of it. This is something of which even I'm guilty, for I am Twisty Ceives. As a young teen, my family embraced helping another whose need far surpassed our own. Out of pity, we took them into our own house and sheltered them temporarily. Their children, with whom I assumed a naive friendship, pretended to enjoy my company, only to spread lies about me after their hastened exit. I tell you this only because they utilize Facebook and local social groups to publicly spread misinformation about someone who, at the time, had zero influence or desire of impact upon the community. I was nobody, with nothing but my family. And that was okay with me. But because of their actions, I became an outcast instead of a recluse. Had this not happened, I might have remained a hermit my whole life, never reaching beyond the sidelines. When I created Twisty Ceives, I created an identity which became my shield against the world. And as time went on, I receded farther and farther into myself until eventually I became invisible. Before the jet ski, I blamed others for this. I mean, how could it not be their fault, right? But as I watched hundreds of pounds of fiberglass, carbon fiber, and polytechnic fly over my head, everything changed. My employer, who had always touted his leadership supreme, demonstrated through his actions that he valued his $25,000 jet ski more than the lives of his acclaimed team. While the jet ski's pilot bled in the water, our supposed captain swam to and nestled his property lovingly, mourning the damage and future repair. Once we finally recovered the injured pilot from the water, who, by the way, was missing part of his lip and bleeding profusely from a large gash in his forehead, we finally proceeded to shore, where my employer then went on to attack the injured pilot. And I should say ex-employer. Had I not stood in the way, the pilot might have suffered a much worse fate. I'll never forget cleaning and bandaging his wounds because he refused to go to the hospital, although he definitely should have gone to the hospital. Up until this point, life was but a dream. But suddenly, I was made awake. Through this experience, I realized who I didn't want to be, which seemed hypocritical considering who I had always been. So 3 days after this, I quit my job and burned every piece of work clothing I owned.
My name is Just Us. Today, I'm burning all of my work shirts.
This began my return to video production, and since that time, I've generated over 700,000 views through various social media channels. Now, to some, that may not seem like a lot. And granted, those numbers are smaller than what I would like them to be, but they are merely the beginning. In spite of homelessness, violence, joblessness, rumors, and lies, I have still managed to make some small impact on a percentage of the population. But in order for this to happen, Twisty Ceives had to die. It wasn't until I abandoned this secret identity that the public could finally embrace, to some degree, the things I had to say. I couldn't hide behind an alter ego and expect the world to want to know me. Because if they did, the person they knew would be a lie, motivated by my desire to maintain an audience. But Twisty Ceives wasn't just a lie I told my audience. It was a lie I told myself to convince me that it was better to hide rather than to stand as who I am. But who was I? And who am I now? What will I become as I continue towards my goals? How will they change me? And in the end, will there be anything left of who I was? This has been the Just Us Express. I'm your host, Just Us, and I thank you for listening to my train of thought.